understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Dillon, and I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
I'm Sam. I study language and culture.
And we already have our candle lit. Do you want to get that for us? We already have our candle lit as our tradition of every episode. This episode is episode 54. Episode 54, and the word we'll be talking about today is witness.
Can I get a witness?
Can I get a witness in the house? Hallelujah.
Ready?
I suppose.
If a tree falls and no one hears it, did it make a sound?
Oh, God. Can I tell a story about that real quick?
Yeah.
There was a kid, I won't name the name, but there was a kid that was 2 years ahead of me in high school, and he had backed into a car. I knew him quite well. I knew his family quite well. And his sister, I was closer with his sister, but he had backed into somebody's car in the high school parking lot. Mm-hmm. And he had backed into the person's car, and when he was called into the principal's office to talk about what happened and backing into this car, he told the principal this: well, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, did it make a sound? And he said, when I backed into the car, no one was around. So did it actually happen?
But you can see evidence that...
And
wait.
Hold
That's
on.
bad logic, because...
Terrible logic.
It's not if a tree falls in the forest and no one sees it, did it fall? Because you can see evidence
or no one
that
heard
it fell.
Sure.
Did it make a sound? So there's that. So the reason...
Right, but of course it made a sound.
Oh, are you one of those?
Of course.
Oh, I don't think it did make a sound, because a sound, by definition, is a vibration that has to hit our ears in order to be experienced.
It has to hit our ears, or does it have to hit the reindeer that are there? Does it have to hit the squirrel?
But it's not asking, did it actually fall? There's no question it fell. It's asking, did it make a sound?
Of course it made a sound.
But what is a sound?
A sound of
a sound is nothing without our eardrum.
Of the crinkling of fall foliage.
But if it's not experienced, then it didn't make a sound.
Yeah, but it was experienced.
Trees don't hear.
By the nature that was around it.
The falling was experienced, but the sound was not experienced.
Birds
sound is the reverberation in our ear.
No,
there can be no sound without the human experience of hearing.
No, that's very anthropocentric.
Or an animal hearing. But it said no one was around, so there were no animals around.
Okay, but that's almost illogical, because there's usually always at least something around. But that could have a reverberation. No, I know where you're getting at, but I'm just saying that's ridiculous. It's a great philosophical question, and at the same time, if the chipmunk heard it,
but the chipmunk wasn't there, and that's the whole.
But the chipmunk
teaser of it, which is if nobody was there to hear it, did it make a sound?
Sure.
I would say no, because inherently the sound. But that's at the root of witness.
I would say the chipmunk was there.
But it wasn't. It was already set up in the riddle. No, there was no one there to hear it. Did it make a sound?
Okay.
I would argue no. Okay.
Well, now that we have that out of the way.
So it's a great philosophical question. Is anything real if we don't bear witness to it? Is it real? I mean, that's the question here. So we're going to talk about, here's what I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about how witness, I want to talk about what that word means, the language witness, what it means in a Christian context, how witness and martyr have the same root and how they're connected, and what a martyr actually is. And I obviously want to situate it with the Roman Empire and talk about how Christianity, I don't want to say it came out of the Roman Empire, but definitely ran parallel to the Roman Empire. Do you know what I mean? And what a witness was in the Roman Empire, and how, like always, in every episode, we're seeing this over and over again, Christianity not borrowed, but like took that language as their own and twisted it and flipped it. So we're going to talk about that.
And I don't want to, we have talked about this briefly on other episodes, but I don't want to get too far in the weeds with this. But this is very interesting because we're almost going towards the end of October.
Yeah.
And soon will be November. And the witness, martyr, saint, it has everything in connection to do with All Saints Day.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that we're doing this episode around this time.
Yeah, and you love All Saints.
Oh, I love All Saints Day. I think it's one of the, let's not get on that.
Dillon and holidays. So is anything real if we don't bear witness to it? I want to riff on that for a minute. So I think anybody who knows us and listens to this knows this by now. I was married before. And like most people in recent divorce, Dillon was my friend during this time, where a lot of people who leave a marriage or a serious relationship write the whole thing off, right? I spent a long time being like, marriage, ugh, no thank you. Been there, done that. I'm not doing that again. And then Dillon and I started dating.
But then you met me.
Yes. And it wasn't instantaneous that I was like, oh, yes, I'm going to marry this one. I had to really think about what is marriage. What would a marriage have to be in order for me to enter into it? It wasn't as lackadaisical as the first time I got married. It was a lot more intentional. So I
just thought I was irresistible.
Just love at first sight. What could I do?
Oh, God. Okay.
It was a slow burn. But it's a flame. Slow burns burn the longest. If you don't want something to just like whoosh, like a bonfire goes out quick, you know?
Wow.
Was that offensive?
No.
I think that's a compliment.
Smoke rising from the ashes.
Okay. I love you. Okay. Did I hurt your feelings?
No. I love you too.
Okay.
Okay, let's not get too mushy.
So I had to define marriage, and this is what I've come to believe. I think that marriage is two people. I do subscribe to the belief that if we don't witness it, it's not real.
Sure.
And even at like a microbiological level, we know we can look at some of the smallest known organisms and see that when they are observed, they take a different path, right? Observation changes life itself, changes course itself. And becoming a parent really solidified this for me. So let's see if I can explain this in like 60 seconds or under. Our daughters do it with their 3 and their 4. All day long, all they are doing is trying to get us to witness them. Like, I mean, our 3-year-old learned how to touch her nose. She's like, Mommy, look, Mommy, look, Mommy, look. And she like can't rest until it's witnessed. It's like until another person sees her doing this thing, she's not convinced it's really happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our 4-year-old is we did too good of a job teaching her how to talk about her feelings, because now all she ever wants to do is talk about her feelings. True. I'm sad. I'm happy. I'm frustrated, right? And until she'll go all day being like, I'm sad. And until we sit down and witness her sadness, she can't let go of it, right? And I think there's something to a witness. I think that's what a marriage is it's somebody else bearing witness to you, because my day doesn't feel real until I come home and talk to Dillon about it. It doesn't feel settled. Do you know what I mean? I think that's...
No, I agree.
And I actually think that's what humans are doing all day long, is we're all just walking around in our own way saying, am I real? I'm real, right? You can see me. You're bearing witness to me. I'm real. You're real. I see you. Do you see me? We're just doing it in a much more disguised, hidden way. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's all we're doing all day long. I'm real. You're real. Can you see me? I can see you. I'm bearing witness to this thing too. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Or is that really wacky?
No,
okay.
No, absolutely.
So, and I think that Christianity is nothing without the public witness of the church. The church is the witness of Christianity. And religion, faith, like everything, requires witness. If Jesus was Jesus's teachings, if he spoke to nobody, it would be nothing. If he was crucified and nobody saw it, it would be nothing. If he resurrected and nobody witnessed that, whatever that mysterious thing was, it would be nothing. It'd be nothing. He'd just be gone and it would be nothing. There's there's a conditional thing, a relational conditional. You know what I mean? Religion and faith requires witness.
Yeah, I'm thinking about
God. I'm even people aren't going to like this, and I might even disagree in a month or a year or 10 years. I don't know, but right now in this moment, I believe even God requires a witness. God wouldn't be. I'm gonna say this. God wouldn't be real. Real as in like in this reality. If we don't bear witness to whatever it is.
But many theologians would argue that's why Jesus of Nazareth.
Right.
I mean, you could argue in other world religions why there had to be, some type of prophet or teacher or something like that.
A Buddha,
but most of those, and this is not anti other world religions. Actually, it's I think it's very very good to include them and embrace them all. But the interesting thing is that our Christian understanding of who Jesus of Nazareth is and was is that that God put on flesh, the incarnation, that God literally came to visit us and to witness that which God created, which is humanity. And so that is something moderately unique.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it better or worse, but it is a uniqueness.
I need that embodiment. But okay, so witness and martyr. Can we talk about those connections?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So in the Greek, the word witness and the word martyr share a root, so they're very connected. And in the New Testament, this means to. In our next episode 55, is going to be on the word testimony.
Yeah.
Right? So in the New Testament, to witness, to be a Christian witness, to be a witness to your faith, is to testify what you experienced, specifically related to Jesus's life, teachings, death, and resurrection, right? Especially in like early Christianity. So to witness is to share or to testify. And this could be verbally, but it could also be very embodied, right? Like you're living out your faith or you're sharing your faith, which is something that Dillon and I in our own ways struggle with, which we'll talk about in the next episode, I think, with testimony.
Yeah.
I think any Christian who's trying to do a decent, I don't want to say job, but for lack of better words, a decent job here on earth, you need to wrestle with it. If you're just totally fine bearing witness to your faith without thinking it through in these difficult global times with diversity and everything, it's very tricky. Do you know what I mean?
St. Paul writes a lot about witness, his own witness of his own witness and vision of seeing the risen Christ on the road to Damascus.
Yeah.
Not only seeing the risen Christ through a bright light, but also being blinded by that light, and yet while being blinded shown something new, and hearing something that calls him to see the world in a new way through the risen Christ. That kind of, he witnessed this in a vision, and he also writes, rather interestingly, I wrote this one down, in Ephesians 1:1, so chapter 1 verse 1, Paul writes, to the saints, which in Greek, saints meaning witnesses, to the saints in Ephesus, he's talking to the people in Ephesus, the faithful in Christ Jesus. Yeah. So he is saying, so in Greek it would be to the witnesses in Ephesus, the faithful in Christ Jesus. So these people who are witnesses are being faithful in Christ Jesus, witnessing what Jesus has done and sharing those teachings.
Yeah, this isn't... Go ahead.
Real quick, I think something that has kind of created a kind of a separation or a division or kind of a binary with the understanding of witness is that in the early days of the church, witness, the Greek understanding of witness, was very, very closely connected to martyrs.
Right.
Which isn't a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. But what happened is over time, if you were a martyr saint or you were a witness, It's talking about people who have died.
Yeah, wait, I really want to talk about that, but I want to go back to Paul. This isn't in my notes.
Well,
but
yeah, but I just want to say one thing about Paul, which might help set
Yeah.
you up. Most of what Paul is talking about in his writings, in his epistles, in his letters to the certain churches, even his writings to individuals like Timothy and Philemon, he is writing them about people who are living, not dead.
right.
So when you talk about witnesses, a lot of times you think about the martyr saint, the witness. So when we think about saints, traditionally nowadays, we only think of the dead.
Right.
But it's about the living and the dead. It's about both of them. And I think Christian communities really need to start to reclaim that the witnesses are not just the ancestors from the past that we remember and honor.
We can witness now.
We are literally living saints who are witnessing now. When years go on after we're dead, people will be talking about what we have done. You know what I mean? So how are you becoming a witness now so that later when you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has to
I
be
think
the both.
Theologically, I don't even know if it's theologically entirely, also just in our experiences, there's something really interesting about, you said that Paul, we're talking about Paul, and he was blinded, and he in this witness story of his, and there is like the light was too bright for him to look directly at. It's like Moses with the fire. It's like we can only see where God just was, not where God is currently. And it's like this veil that you and I were talking about a couple hours ago after dinner of like, we can only get so close to it. Like I actually, there's a teacher whose stuff that I read, and she said recently, like, when you're on a spiritual path, you get to a point where you have to choose, do I take this thing all the way, or do I get off this path? And by the way, getting off the path isn't usually an option for people who are on it. You just keep going. But the more I go down this path, I actually don't think I believe in enlightenment here on earth. I'm not sure that pure enlightenment exists.
I don't.
That concept feels too hierarchy, too ladder, too more divisions for me. But I think we can only get so close to God, and I think Paul's story, like, we can only bear witness so much until we get into this, like, abstract, weird, mushy-gushy, just non-physical experience, which is why Jesus is good for me.
Yeah,
I need
so
to be embodied. Wait, hold on. So there's this poem by Rilke, and it goes something like, it's translated from German, but it goes something like, for some people, God is the coastline, and for other people, God is the ship.
Ooh.
Which is so good for me, because I very much need a coastline God, because I am a ship in the waves. I am just all over the place internally, right? So I need a God that grounds me, a God that brings me back to shore. And other people need a God that's more adventurous and out there, because they're already pretty steady of a person. Do you know what I mean?
No, I totally do, and I want to give an example. I don't usually give personal examples. Samantha always encourages me to do this.
Wait till our next episode. We're getting real personal.
We'll see. I really struggle with with offering. Not that I don't have a personal faith, because I do, but offering personal stories, I struggle with that.
Why? Because you're private?
Well, we're not talking about that now. But But what I will share is a story that personally transforms me in that I see a story of something being witnessed, something real and tangible that was witnessed. So in the Easter season, if you're in a liturgical church, for 50 days, Easter will be celebrated, even after Easter Day. And one of the readings that comes during the Easter season is Jesus on the road to Emmaus. And people are walking with him to the road to Emmaus. This is the risen Christ now. He was crucified, he died, he was buried, and then he rose. So this is a different Jesus, a risen Christ. And they don't recognize him. They witness him, but they don't exactly recognize him until they go while they're on the road to Emmaus, and they come to a place and they sit at a table. And the risen Christ takes bread, and when he breaks the bread in half, they recognize him as the one who broke bread before at the Last Supper. And he vanishes. And what is left in a tangible way, is that in that bread, and there was wine, that they can witness that something is real and tangible. So for me, I struggle sometimes with just vague stories, or even stories that are pretty concrete. I love stories. I'm a pastor. I love telling them.
You need a coastline guy.
I love the ancient stories of the scriptures, and I love preaching them and teaching them. But I'll tell you something that helps me. I'm a very sacramental person. So when I see bread and wine and we set that apart to become something that we feel that God comes to us in, that to me is like being on the road to Emmaus. Mm-hmm. So every Sunday when I celebrate communion, I trust that presence is there, and I witness that.
Good stuff. Save it for our testimony.
No, so what I'm saying is I experienced that.
Right.
And Paul experienced something. He witnessed something, Christ's presence coming to him. Those people witnessed Jesus coming to them in the breaking of bread and the sharing of wine.
Yeah.
So these are people witnessing what Jesus has done, with how the risen Christ comes to them.
Yeah. So I want to start to ground witness. So to witness is essentially to testify, whether verbally or in a more embodied sense, like living it out. And this really, I think that sometimes, like, I know some people we all have a religion. I'm sold on that. We all bow down to something, right? I told you this a couple hours ago too, but I recently heard somebody say, and I wrote it down in my notebook, whatever you spend your last 30 minutes before falling asleep on and your first 30 minutes in the morning doing, that's likely what you're worshiping in life, right? So if you fall asleep on your phone and wake up and check your phone, you're worshiping your phone, right? If you...
we went over ours.
Yes, we did. Do you want to share what you do before bed?
So...
Work?
I work before bed. I try to read. Those are my things. And then when I wake up in the morning, I immediately feed our dog, take her out, get our girls breakfast, change a diaper.
Which is service to others. I don't see those as...
No, but I don't think that's my nighttime routine is very terrible.
Yeah. Well, here's why I bring that up. We all bow down to something, right? Whatever that is. And it's ever shifting. We just have to be conscious of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing before bed when we first wake up? Keep an eye on that. We all bow down to something. And I know some people who, in my life, who would not label themselves as religious, right? They wouldn't bear witness to a faith. Fine. Of course. Okay, great. But if they cut out sugar for 6 months and feel real good, bet your bottom dollar they're telling everybody about it, and they're telling everybody they shouldn't eat sugar either.
Oh, right.
Right? They're bearing witness to a lifestyle. They're bearing witness to something that has transformed them. People who lose 30 pounds and they went to the gym, they're telling everybody, you just got to lift weights, man. You got to lift weights. It'll change everything, right?
Well,
they have found transformation, and they want to tell everybody about it. It's nothing. It's not different. It's the same thing, right? Like, you're bearing witness to something that has transformed you. You're testifying this to everybody, saying, look, like, what's that saying?
Some people are...
proof's in the pudding.
Yeah,
look at me. I'm doing great.
I I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this, but like I always find it interesting when someone says like, I'm not really interested in organized religion. I don't really want to go to church, or I'm not really interested in organized religion or going to a worship service or something like that. And then you find out that every week they go to a yoga class, which is an organized class with a set of things, and it's in community.
Promises to transform.
And then, they go out for coffee.
With a hierarchy that you pay for.
Right, they go out for coffee afterwards. Mm-hmm. So
I do it religiously.
Yeah, they do it religiously. So I always think, now some people just they really are not a part of any community or organized community. Yeah. I get that, but
as Rob Bell would say, we are liturgical people.
Right. It's so interesting because, I agree with you. I find it very. I can understand if people say like, "Oh, I'm very spiritual." Well, yeah.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
And then I can understand why someone won't be religious, but actually, people should really kind of rethink that. Because they're witnessing religious moments. Speaking of witness, they are bearing witness to religious moments all throughout their life. Yeah. I think of well, she's a listener. I don't know if I should. I was going to give an example, but
maybe don't. Is it a bad example?
No, I think it's a good example. So for instance, there's a woman who's a school teacher. She's a school teacher, and I just talked to her very, very briefly, and she teaches kids about like holidays and different things that come with holidays and do all that type of stuff, and it's very interesting. And now she was in promotion of this, that she's a person of faith, she's a religious person, but you start to think like, well, where do all these holidays come from? Where do all these, even if they're not a religious holiday, someone coming together to celebrate something is a communal thing, and it has both overtones and undertones of coming together in community, for mostly an organized community.
It's throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, so like I think like
embrace something.
Someone can say they're not religious, and that's fine. However, they might have to redefine what religion is for them.
Yeah, well, the reason I brought up like the sugar or the working out or whatever it is, there's something about us humans that we are wired to bear witness to that which transforms us. We want to tell everybody. We want to live in a way that makes other people curious about the thing. Like, we have been transformed. We want everybody to know. We think that they should hop on our bandwagon, right? Very human. And this to others, as somebody who was actually against Christianity and against religion in general for the first 28 years of my life, very annoying. Very, well, I'll talk about that more.
You were against it.
We'll talk about it next episode. I can nuance it next episode, but this can be annoying when people go around bearing witness, whether it's they cut out sugar or they want you to come to church with them, right? It's very annoying. And this is where humility and emotional intelligence comes in, because it's not just about you aggressively and assertively bearing witness. There's another person. When you're having a conversation with somebody, there's another person, and you have to know, who is that person? Are they craving this? Are they in a place where do you know what I mean? It's not.
I think anyone.
Just bear witness. You have to tell everybody about this experience. Time and place.
Sure, time and place, but sometimes, yes, I'm with you 110% on time and place. And I think of like Martin Luther King Jr. There was no time and place for his message.
There was.
No. Well, let me say it this way. He was very clear about civil rights. He spoke in a way that kind of transcended all religious groups, political groups, and yet, hold on, and yet what he was saying, what he was bearing witness to in terms of equality for racial equality, that really irritated some people.
Yes,
So it was a little annoying to some people. And yet,
for sure, but let's place him in his context. If we're going to talk about him bearing witness, when I have students who do their rhetorical analysis essays, we just got done with this in my rhetoric classes, inevitably students want to talk about the rhetoric of Martin Luther King Jr. And they talk about him as if he just dropped from the sky and was in DC giving these speeches. And I have to remind them, Google him.
Right.
What was his job? What are his titles?
Right.
He has an advanced degree. He is the Reverend Doctor. Well, I don't even know which one comes first. Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King.
He was a
Jr.
reverend before he was a doctor.
But I think it goes in a specific order. I don't know, whatever. But he was a reverend. He first got a following because the black church was the hub of civil rights.
Oh, right.
Because
That's what I'm saying.
Whenever segregation was going on, whenever enslavement ended, where did black people run to? Churches. They built their own churches. That was the one institution of salvation for them.
Right.
So the black church, and he became a leader in the black church. That's how he had a following.
Sure.
So there was a time and a place and an audience
willing
to hear him.
Oh, absolutely.
And he was speaking first and foremost in the beginning to black people.
Oh, totally.
And then white allies came into the picture, and it was people who were willing to hear him. He gained enough traction that he was killed for it, just like Jesus. But Jesus originally was speaking to people who wanted to hear it.
Yes, no, I'm following you there, totally. But what I'm saying is that they weren't afraid to bear witness to
when it got dangerous.
Yes, and they weren't afraid to bear witness to the truth that they believed Martin Luther King Jr. in particular, that God had laid on their heart. There's one for you. But I think of the same thing. I think of like the witness that Moses bared, the witness that Miriam and Abraham and Aaron and all these people bared. I think about the persistence.
Yes.
The persistence of a person who bears witness. People who bear witness, a lot of times, there's a persistence to them. That's the beauty of being a witness. They feel that they feel
and consistency, persistence and consistency of like.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how it's related to martyr in a big way, right? So first, witness and martyr share a Greek root. And I just want to say this really quickly. The first 2 centuries following Jesus' death, there weren't that many martyrs for the Christian faith. They weren't being killed to the degree in which the Christian narrative likes to say they were. And we know that from different, like, Pliny and am I saying that right? Pliny,
yeah. Pliny the Younger.
Pliny. We see that in letters between these politicians where essentially politicians are saying to their higher ups like, hey, there are these groups of Jesus followers, what should I do with them? And then these higher ups would write back saying, unless they're like really causing problems, like and being dangerous and hurting others, or like flat out rioting, leave them alone. And if they are flat out rioting, give them a chance to come in and bow down to Caesar. And then if they don't, then you kill them. And that did happen sometimes in the first 2 centuries, but it didn't happen that much. And the politicians, the Romans, didn't really want to kill these groups because they were pretty much underground. They were gathering in homes. They were quiet.
They weren't very public because it wasn't.
It was after
it was
70.
Illegal.
Right. It was illegal to not bow down to Caesar. They didn't care if you were bowing down to other gods, as long as you were also bowing down to Caesar. Eventually, in the 3rd century, right before Constantine came into the picture, there were 2 emperors specifically before Constantine where that's whenever persecution really ramped up, and that's, I mean, they were seeking out Christians, Jesus followers. There wasn't Christianity yet, but they were seeking out Jesus followers. They wanted them
which saw an uptick in the martyr, the witness.
Right. So in those first 2 centuries, there weren't that many people who were killed for the faith. Some of them, but not that many. They weren't being hunted down, right? That wasn't until the 3rd century, right before Constantine came in and said, hey, let's join forces, right? But
the popular...
when you have a faith... Wait, I really want to make this point. When you have a faith story narrative that begins with your leader being crucified, being a martyr for the faith, a martyr for the cause, it became a real preoccupation for early Jesus followers. They really if you died for your faith, like a few people did in the first 2 centuries, that was like the ultimate, right? But this also ran parallel to gladiator fights, where there were 2 people fighting to the death. I think I said this many episodes ago.
I think so too.
There were 2 people fighting to the death. Both of them were fighting for Rome. And if you died with honor for Rome. And if you won, you were the victor of Rome.
Right.
So you had, and they were a martyr, right? It was a martyr. You were martyred for Rome. You were loyal to Rome till the end, even if you were killed in a gladiator fight, right? And so they kind of hijacked that story. I don't know if hijacked is the right word, but they took that story and made it their own, of like, we have our own martyrs and Jesus was the first one and you're killing some of us, but that's okay. They died for the faith and their reward will be huge. Kind of
well,
thing.
and that's where
they
you
were for the cause.
And so the 1st and 2nd century, there was limited amounts there was limited amounts or small amounts or regional things where there was persecutions, as you said. There wasn't much.
Right,
now,
I'm not denying that there weren't persecutions, but I'm saying they weren't as large.
Yeah, right. But then in the very, very late, some would argue more the 3rd century, you start to really see an increase because
they were hunting Jesus followers down.
There was much persecution, and this is where you get the sanctoral calendar, which is the stories of the saints. So you start to hear people are reading about like Perpetua and Felicity.
Yes.
They're reading about Polycarp. So all these people, and those are just 3. But it's interesting. Could I share something very brief?
You know what it does.
An interesting thing, as the church starts to evolve, things start to change, as they always do in communities. And so you have Paul in the very beginning, about 20 to 25 years after Jesus' death and resurrection. You have Paul writing, and he's talking about the witnesses, the saints, the witnesses. And they're people who are living in communities, witnessing by telling the life of Jesus and following the teachings of Jesus, right? Now, fast forward a little while, and then you get, so it went from the living to the dead, and it had a big emphasis on that, right? Mm-hmm. But witnesses throughout the church, just like we talked on our episode for angels, there was like a hierarchy for angels, and I listed them, which is still kind of official. There's also a hierarchy in the church for these witnesses. Mm-hmm. Can I share them with you? Mm-hmm. I think it's quite fascinating.
And then we're going to talk about the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and then we could say so the top two witnesses are apostles and evangelists. And those were people who directly knew Christ or spread the gospel. So these are people like Peter and Mary Magdalene and Paul, people that either knew Christ or had an direct experience with Christ. So those are the apostles and the evangelists. And then there's the martyrs, those who died for the faith. They're a specific kind of witness. Mm-hmm. And then there's confessors. And confessors are people who suffered for the faith, were tortured for the faith because they confessed it, but they weren't killed. But they're a type of witness. There's also doctors of the church, people who have written treatises or intellectual writings about the church to stand for the church's teachings. They're a type of witness, but they weren't killed. And patriarchs, so like people of the heads of tribes or groups, and prophets of the Old Testament, of the Hebrew Scriptures, those are a witness in the Christian faith. Here's another last interesting one, the ones on the bottom. The witnesses, bless you, are the virgin saints. Mm. So people, men or women, that were practiced celibacy, and that was a type of witness. People who were in monastic orders, people who were pastors and missionaries, those were types of witnesses. So there's kind of this level of witness.
Yeah, as institutions like to do. So there are a lot of different kinds of witnesses, but if you keep the Roman backdrop of all of this, this is where my language and culture stuff comes in. Like, what's the culture behind this word is what I'm always interested in. Like, where do we get this word? Why did it come into our language, right? So, in Roman law, a witness, just like today, is someone who gave testimony in a legal case to bear witness, right? So to bear witness in this Christian sense was to, or in a Jesus following sense in the first 2 centuries, was to tell of Jesus, of your experience of the risen Christ, of your experience with Jesus's teachings, whatever it was, to bear witness to Jesus in front of Roman authority. Because again, in the first 2 centuries, and especially after that, before Constantine, people were dying. People were being killed because they proclaimed Jesus as Lord and not Caesar. And that was a problem for Caesar. That was a problem for the emperor. So they were called into a courtroom. So this is all very grounded and very literal, right? They were called into the courtroom. And there were witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you were supposed to bow down. What they wanted was for you to bow down and say, I worship Caesar, right? But these Jesus followers, many of them did not. Instead, they were a witness, like literally in the courtroom, but then also a witness to their own faith, saying to these Roman authorities, Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is Lord and Savior, not Caesar. So can you see how, why we did Savior and Son of God and all those episodes before this one to kind of set up to show you over and over again, it's all about Roman language.
It is about Roman language. I was looking at my notes here.
Yeah.
I wrote down an example here about witnesses and in direct connection to Roman authority and corruption. It's Revelation chapter 1 verses 5. It calls Jesus the faithful witness, and it speaks about those who are clothed in white and holding palm branches, and they are drenched in the blood of the Lamb, and they came out of the great ordeal. So John of Patmos is writing in the book of Revelation and kind of countering these things that are going on in Rome and calling those who are doing similar things, but to Jesus
and remember,
or
the
for
book of
Jesus.
Revelation is he's writing a letter.
He's writing a letter
to
to
an actual group of people,
groups of churches,
yeah.
And it's very anti-empire. It's very anti-Rome, and he's reminding these. Jesus followers, these communities, that you are bearing witness to the risen Christ, and that this risen Christ is Lord and Savior, not Caesar, and calls Jesus the one that we follow, the faithful witness, this faithful witness.
Yes, and the reason why bearing witness was so important in the early church and early Christianity and the early. We keep saying Jesus followers. That's important to me that we don't call them Christians before they were Christians.
Well, that's correct.
One thing that they were called, these were not unified groups yet either until Constantine took over and all the councils started to meet and hash it all out. But they were often called, many of them were called associations of the anointed, because remember, Messiah means anointed one, Christ, Messiah means anointed one. So associations of the anointed, which I really like. So Jesus followers, these associations of the anointed, these ecclesias, these churches that were gathering. The reason this was really radical is because Rome, what happened whenever somebody didn't follow or bow down to Caesar as Lord or Caesar as God, is Rome will kill you, right? But what happened when people didn't bow down to Jesus as God is these associations of the anointed, they didn't kill you. They didn't scream at you. They bared witness, which was nonviolent, right? Their tactics were not in alignment with Rome. This was actually, it sounds so simple to us, but radical. Could you imagine if any time somebody wanted to wage war, people's response wasn't to return hatred for hatred, but instead, speaking of MLK, what's that quote of his? Hate can't drive out hate, only love can do that. The early church knew that. These early members of associations of the anointed, early Jesus followers knew that deeply, because
There's a
there aren't accounts. We heard somebody, Josh White said one time, he was asked, what could make you not a Christian? And he said, there's one thing and one thing only that could make me not a Christian. If I was shown evidence that the first followers of Jesus were violent. And they weren't. They weren't. They were being killed, and they didn't kill back. They didn't wage war. They didn't start an army. And their numbers got pretty big where they could have.
later on they did, but not in the very beginning.
That's what I'm saying, in the beginning. Which, I don't want to use the word purist sense, because there was never a pure Christianity. But we have 2,000 years of memory now. Of course we're gonna miss the mark. But like in the generation or 2 or 3 following Jesus' death, so people whose grandparents witnessed Jesus with their own eyes, right? Their violence wasn't there.
Well,
they weren't fighting back. Now later with the Crusades and stuff, because we merged with the Empire and it got really crazy. Later on, we really messed it up.
But I even think
in the beginning, it wasn't there.
I even think of Paul, who was indeed someone who persecuted people. He persecuted people and imprisoned them, and one of the ways in which the Spirit called Paul, because sometimes people will talk about Paul being converted. He wasn't converting from anything. The Paul story is a call story. Paul was called by the Holy Spirit and witnessed the risen Christ, and he was called to live a new way. He didn't have to convert from one thing to another. We could talk about that at a different time, but he saw a community. He saw a God in the person of Jesus of Nazareth, who was a nonviolent person. He actually went from a very violent person to a nonviolent leader in the early Jesus movement. Right. And so you see someone who was transformed by even I think of the stories, usually around Holy Week, when the Roman soldier is said to be in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he goes to protect. It's Peter, and he goes to protect Jesus, and Peter pulls out a sword that he finds, and he cuts the guy's ear off, and Jesus says, "Whoa, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. What are you doing?" Jesus, heals the man. He heals. Let's talk about this.
Healing is not curing.
Healing is not curing. Yes, number one. But Jesus, knowing that Rome was going to crucify him, was going to kill him, and a very Roman soldier who just had his ear cut off, he gives aid to. Mm-hmm. He gives aid to the empire who wants to murder him. Mm-hmm. Talk about bearing witness to something greater, to something more loving, to something more nonviolent. A very representative of an empire that's going to kill you within hours.
Yeah. I mean, it's to turn the other cheek.
That's good stuff.
Give your cloak too. It's like, just take the service a step further, because you're actually tricking the system.
Yeah.
It's actually the most loving kindness and rebellious thing you can do. It's actually, I keep using this phrase, but it's actually really badass. It's this clever, Martin Luther King uses it. Malcolm X in the beginning, and then he shifted paths, but it's just this, like, love is actually a form of rebellion against those acting not in love.
Right.
And it's actually a way to bear witness in an embodied way. It doesn't always have to be verbal kind of thing.
Yeah.
I have one more thing. Are you done? Do you have anything else?
I don't have anything else.
All right, witness. So we gave you some context there. Our next episode is on testimony, which is very connected, and we're going to get personal. If our next episode, by some chance, is not testimony, it's because Dillon chickened out. But we're going to talk about the word testimony and give our own testimonies, Christian testimonies. How are you feeling about it? So, and
Can we talk about it for 1 second?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not good with testimonies, as I shared before. One of my least favorite essay questions for my ordination exams for the ordination questions was how do you see and how do you experience Jesus in your own personal life? And I thought, oh Lord, what do I have to do? But I was able to do it, but it was slightly difficult for me
because you don't like to be witnessed. You don't like to be.
Oh no. I can tell you all about Jesus.
Right,
Intellectually,
but
but how Jesus is working in my own life, I'd much rather talk about a story about what he did in a parable.
Why?
You're pushing me a little too far. I had seen people in my own family I think abuse that, and whether they knew it or not, that's how I took it.
So you're overcorrecting,
and so it's overcorrecting, and it's my own problem. It's no one else's but my own, and I need to pray about that more. But that's kind of where it stems from. But here's an interesting thing. This is the story I want to tell about bearing witness. Mm-hmm. On October, I think it was the 3rd or 4th, so like a week or two ago, the Church of England, they appointed a new Archbishop of Canterbury, the first female Archbishop, the current Bishop of London, Sarah Mullally, or I can't pronounce her last name, or remember it honestly. But anyways, it's interesting. I listened to an interview about her. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing is that the Church of England and the Lutheran Church have almost identical theological teachings. Yeah. I mean, there's.
We always say if we weren't Lutheran, we'd be Episcopalian.
Yeah, we'd be Episcopalian. Really, the history is different. One's English, one's German and Scandinavian, but the teachings are almost identical. But
our heritage is actually much more Anglican.
Yes, that's very true. But what the new Archbishop said was very interesting. They said, "Where did your journey of faith begin?" And she said, "Well, I was in confirmation class." And the teacher said, "Would you like to follow Jesus?" And I decided to say yes. Oh,
I hate that.
Oh, I could have.
I'm with you. I don't like that.
It just.
She's allowed to have that. She can.
No. But let me say no. But I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about it ever since, because I'm thinking, am I just going to dismiss her witness,
right?
Her experience of who Jesus really is in her own personal life, because of certain language or the way it whatever? I don't know if I would ever ask my confirmation students that specific. I would ask them that question, but not with that terminology. And yet, I'm trying to really wrap my mind around it, because she is being deeply, deeply personal. She is sharing how Jesus' teachings, how the risen Christ is speaking to her. It was in a very liturgical way. She clearly said it was in confirmation class. She was preparing for her confirmation, a very mainline Protestant setting. And yet she had some type of experience that she feels in some way that she said yes to.
Yes.
Hold on. And I don't want to discount that, but when I hear it put that way, I mean, I looked her up. I mean, I feel, I mean, she's theologically in line with me, and yet I don't know if I would have said it that way.
For those of you listening, wondering, like, what's the problem? Dillon and I struggle with choice theology. Like this idea that you can just decide in a moment.
But I don't think she thinks that.
No,
I think that's what...
Wait, I want to get this out. It is okay if your faith started with a decision.
Oh, I think it's beautiful.
And I believe so firmly that even our thoughts matter, and we're going to be held accountable for even our thoughts. It's not just our actions. Like, even our thought creates reality, and we're going to be held accountable for all of that. And not in like a punishing way, but like, I believe all of that matters. And I believe that energy communicates.
Yeah.
And when somebody is bearing witness to their faith, and they're doing it from their own sense of, I have had this experience and I want to share it, and I am not going to control, I'm going to pontificate for just a minute, but bear with me. I have an ethic in my creative life that's very hard for me, but I have to come back to it over and over again. It's my job. I have a right to my labors, not to the fruits of my labors. I have a right to share my books, to share my poetry, to share my creative work. And then what it does out in the wild is none of my business. And I don't get to control it. I don't get to guide it. I get to have my labors. I don't get to control what happens next. When someone bears witness to their faith, to put that in more specific language, when somebody is talking, giving a testimony, talking about their faith because they made a decision, they had an experience, you can feel it energetically when they are sharing it, and then you can feel when they want to control the outcome and control you.
Oh, well, that's not what she's doing.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's beautiful the way she communicated it, because I know what you're talking about. She's sharing her experience as authentically as she can. You can feel when somebody is doing that. You can also feel when somebody is saying that they chose Jesus. Why can't you choose Jesus?
You're that's not what forever. She was saying.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's where you and I can take issue sometimes with testimonies and bearing witness to, because some people have an agenda by sharing their own things.
Right.
They want to control the outcome of it, and they want to control everybody else's experience, and they think everyone else's experience should be the same. And I say that as somebody who does that sometimes.
No, right. No,
I think I know best.
You can tell that the bishop, that she was very, very genuine in bearing witness to her own personal faith.
Right.
And here's something that's very interesting. I'm going to close with this. But here's something that's very interesting about bearing witness, especially in this modern age. Personal decision, choice theology, even outside of the church, that is rampant. I mean, it is absolutely rampant. If you ask most people in Western developed countries, they're going to say, well, I chose this, or I chose that, or I did this, or I did that, or I want that, or I made a decision to do this, or it's all about choice and decision and all these things.
Which just makes a person into a mini god.
Yeah, so there could be, I'm not saying this about the bishop, but there could be a slight I don't want to call it an understanding, a slight counter to what, I'm creating a binary here, and I don't mean to do that, but I don't know how else to talk about it. The more secular world is saying, well, I choose to do this and I choose to do that, and there's no problem with it, and you have your own choice to be your own person, to be whoever you are, yada, yada. There's that.
It's too individualistic.
Right? So now, right. So that's kind of where the secular world is. So maybe in order to have or to tell an authentic personal story of faith, I would do it in a very different way, but some are trying to get a little bit more comfortable with the phrasing, I decided, or I chose, or I made a decision to say yes, to live out the teachings of Jesus, to be a part of the community. Because people in the secular world talk that way all the time.
Mm-hmm. And there is...
I would warn, because that language has been hijacked. Mm-hmm. That's why I don't like it. It's not about that. It's not about her personal relationship with God and the following Jesus. But I'm not talking about that. I think that's fine and beautiful. It's the wording.
Yeah. I already have notes about this choice stuff.
But hold on. But I think that as she bears witness, and as some people continue to bear witness in the church, there could be a counter to using the same language that's more in the secular society of things, and kind of being playful with that. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Well. What I'm saying is we take things all the time that, like for instance, like witness. Well, witness was a legal term in the Roman courts, and we took that and then we played with it. We played with it. That's what I'm saying.
So you're saying by the bishop saying that
I'm not saying that the bishop said that. I'm just saying that anyone that says something like the bishop said could be slightly playful with that language,
maybe,
but meaning.
I think I get what you're saying.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's very difficult to.
In the testimony episode 55, which will be next week, I have some stuff to say about choice.
Well, there's a lot.
My experience with choice or lack thereof. So we'll talk about that more.
Well, I don't. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, I don't.
Don't withhold. You always look like you're going to say something. Say it. Don't withhold. What are you going to say?
I believe that I either believe that there is no choice, or that there is very, very limited choice when it comes to God, God embracing you. I mean,
for sure, yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't. I was being silly in saying I don't think there's any choice, but I
think it's limited.
It's very limited. I don't have a very high doctrine of free will.
No.
I'm not a free.
I believe in free will.
I believe in free will, but when it comes to theology, I'm not a free will theologian.
It leads to very dangerous, judgmental.
Yeah, but anyways, cases. As we bear witness to these things, I think it's our language, because we talk about language on this podcast. Our language, it can really make or break things.
So the next episode is about testimony, because it's related to this witness word, which we already kind of set a foundation for. Dillon and I, for our own reasons, I'm not a private person. I'm not afraid to talk about my own inner stuff. I'm not as easily embarrassed.
I'll be ready.
Anything like that. So I'm fine with it, but for different reasons. I don't love out in the wild talking about my own faith, because I never want to offend or make someone else feel like I feel like I'm superior. I don't want to be one of those Christians, right? So Dillon and I are really entering into some new terrain here with these next few episodes, testing something out on screen. But I do want to end with Rilke, if you know who that is, a German poet who I've been reading a lot. I read a few years ago and then I revisited, and I want to share a snippet from one of his poems, because it has to do with witness. Ready?
I am.
I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they came toward me to meet and to be met.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right? So good. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it.
That's good.
Which means that a tree does not make a sound if it is not heard by another. Because a sound, by definition, requires ears. There we go. All right.
Stay curious.